All right, guys, welcome back to the studio. Just checking. Yep, looks good. So, yeah, last time I posted one of these nocturne scenes, I did get a lot of feedback, a lot of requests from folks wanting to see a nocturne demo. So I'd like to repaint this scene for you guys. And the thing is, the way I'm going to approach it and the way I painted the scene previously is, yes, it's a nocturne, but it's a very kind of abstracted nocturne, really just focusing on large shapes and value shifts. So that's how I'm going to approach it here today. There is actually a little bit more going on, like there's building, there's cars back there, there's a bunch of tree trunks, there's some lights, but I'm really going to handle it as basically a water shape, tree shape, sky shape. That's about it. Value-wise, you could actually look at it and squint down and say, okay, there's kind of a light shape here. Between that light and that light, that creates a light shape. Mostly kind of a dark shape here, and then a sky shape there. Maybe some bigger, a few bigger sky holes popping through there. But the process, I would say, is, relatively speaking, kind of straightforward. So, in a nocturne, I'm actually even working on luxe paper here. So this is a pure white paper. I'll definitely, put in those rich, dark values to start out with. And for a nocturne, I'm not going to hesitate. I will not hesitate to use, say, Terry Ludwig eggplant, some of those other dark values. But the shapes are really key. I need to get this, and then down here, there is the angle kind of coming down this way. Probably comes down to about there. So that's that good old eggplant. Pretty dark, pretty intense. There is some lighter value, say in here. Put it in here. Maybe even go a little brown with that. This is a nice violet color here. And I am not holding back with saturation either. These are some pretty saturated, intense colors. Some greens. And I'm really focusing on, you notice in the water, all these marks are drifting down. The greens that I'm seeing, there tends to be a little bit more kind of warm green in here. Likewise up here, I would make it a bit on the warmer side. And with the blue in the sky, it is still a nocturne. So even if there's a bit of kind of glowing light up here, it should still be relatively, all things considered, relatively dark. It's not going to go light, as like a regular landscape during the day. I can get a little bit more subtlety in some of this as I build up, you know, beyond the underpainting, as I start doing more of the finishing painting. You know, and even now I want to show some of that gold reflection and that gold here. A little bit of it there. Reflecting down. And there's a nice intense blue that I used in the first version of this. I actually don't know what color that was. See, that's not even intense enough. And by intense, I'm, you know, predominantly referring to, you know, kind of the saturation of it. Ooh, that's nice. That's a nice saturated blue. Might not be it though, but worth putting in there, I think. So that's all I would do. You know, that would be kind of the initial block in that I'll now wet with alcohol. I like, in my initial version, how there's actually some violet throughout here. So I don't want the trees to just be green. I'll put some violet in the trees as well. So, yeah, very abstracted. That's what I want it to be. And for the underpainting, because I do want to focus on really big abstracted shapes, I'm using massive brush. So this is a synthetic flat. It's a size 50, so it's a white nylon flat from Dick Blick. It's a Blick Mega Brush. Gosh, I'd have to imagine that's about 2.5 inches wide. And I'm only working on an 8x12 here, so an 8x12 piece of of Lux. So, you know, it's this one brush can cover a good bit of the surface pretty quickly, and that's what I want, because I want to focus on big shapes. I don't want to get caught up really in almost any detail at all. I should drift light into dark instead of dark into light, because if I drift dark into light, it's really going to darken those lights. But it's not going to really overly lighten the darks. But if I drift dark into light, the darks will go quite a bit dark. Let me say that again. I'm going to drift, like here, for instance, light down into dark, because the light won't really lighten those darks too much. If I pull the dark into the light, it'll actually darken the lights considerably. So just like that did. So it's interesting because with Lux, even like in this alcohol wet underpainting, the idea that Lux, you know, the pastel, once it's down, it kind of sits there, it doesn't move, is even true in an alcohol underpainting. See, notice that hard edge? With UArt, that hard edge will basically just completely disappear with virtually no effort. With Lux, it doesn't. You know, it kind of stays put, so you have to kind of more consciously work to soften with Lux, because those edges just sort of stay put. This is really kind of what I would call like staining the paper, just purely a few big shapes, and that should lighten once I come in with my heat gun here. Another thing too is Lux, you know, it seems to have a little bit less absorptive, like immediate absorption quality. So, you know, you can see here there's a lot of drifting. It would be different on a UArt, you know, and even a Fisher 400, like the color would set in a little bit quicker you get less of that alcohol migration. But what does happen with Lux is because there's a drippy effect, you see a little bit more of the paper popping through. But it's a fun kind of starting point, essentially just having a few big shapes here. And then it's just a matter of how much reality do you want to create over this, you know, very simplified down composition. And for me, it's not going to be that much. I don't really actually want too much of a sense of reality. You know, and playing with different approaches and different techniques, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean your painting is overall moving in that direction. It can just be fun to play around, you know, and try something different and see how it goes. And even if you don't continue to pursue that approach or that style or that technique, likely the experience will still kind of inform your future work. So that's, I think, one of the real pluses to doing, you know, a little bit of different technique now and then. You know, I definitely have noticed that with like doing the watercolor underpainting. That's informed my painting on the whole quite a bit. Okay, so because there is this lightening effect with the Lux, I'll definitely need to come in and reestablish some things. Going to indicate a little bit more form there. And then again, the difference between, say, this angle and that angle, and the difference in the size of these shapes is really important. So I'm going to make sure I can maintain that. So I'm reinforcing some of those darks here. Some interesting color interactions happening that I'm liking. Still in the violet family. Definitely a cooler, or sorry, slightly kind of, it's hard to say. I mean, that eggplant is so dark. It's hard to really, I think, assign it a color temp. Maybe this is, I don't know if I can even compare this color temp wise, but regardless, this has some really nice saturation to it. You know, interrupting some of those vertical marks. You know, anytime I feel like I'm getting too repetitive, say with vertical oriented marks, nice to change that up. Bring some horizontal, especially in reflection, water reflections. You need a little bit of that variety. There's some nice cool blues. In here, put a little bit reflecting down. Nice, all right. There's a nice warm greenish glow in the first version I did, and that greenish glow is up here. I'm wondering if I can get a little closer to that. Yeah, that has a closer feel. Because in the scene, you see a lot more warmth, and you know, most likely when I did this the first time around, you know, there was some green, but there's also some kind of golden color in there. I still have this color in my green, you know, green part of my palette, but it's has quite a bit more yellow in the mix. You know, so maybe a little bit of that would be nice. See a little bit kind of popping through over here. That could be nice. And as such, you know, maybe see a little bit reflecting down. Likewise, could see a little bit in your water reflection here. Just looking for the warm violet color. I like this color as a warm violet. Probably too dark for what I want it to do here. Can go back to the initial color I used in the underpainting, which is it's a nice Great American. Because you can see there's a bit of land there that gives a little bit lighter value, and it kind of warms it up a little bit that I like. And I can kind of drift this down. And I want to look at the sky color. And I wonder, sky and the water reflection color here. Could be a little too dark. Just trying to pull out a few areas, kind of sky holes, but without, again, getting into too much detail. So the last thing I want for this scene is a bunch of kind of distracting detail. And I won't hesitate to pretty quickly get in some of my light, because it's not super, super light here, kind of hitting that golden area. And pretty quickly put some of that in, and it's surrounded by a nice kind of warmer color, which functions as a good transition to what's happening around it. You know, so this nice kind of reddish orange sitting here to the side of it. Oh, the joys of having a daughter in preschool. We got a little bit of a reprieve for about a year or so. Henry started, or actually kind of stopped bringing stuff home. And before Lucy started preschool, it's like, okay, this is actually, that's right. It's what it feels like to not get sick every, month or so. But now we're back to it, and it seems to be getting me more than my wife for whatever reason. Could be that Lucy comes into our bed almost every night and lays right on top of me, and often will be breathing right into my face. So not a lot of protection from whatever she may have. All right, let's see here. like I talked about, these are all, these marks are all getting a little bit stripy coming down. It's a good time to change it up. And there's this wonderful, angled movement in these colors. I want to make sure I can capture that. It's not all coming straight down, and if it was, it would feel much too kind of static. So I'm trying to get this movement across here. I like that movement. I do like to do a little more blending on Luxe. Again, because the way it holds on to pastel, it sort of, you naturally get less sort of edge work with it because it just holds so tightly onto the actual pigment that you kind of have to be more willing to get your fingers in there. To me, this sky shape is a bit big, and I do feel like the colors may be a bit too light. So, if we were to go in, I should be able to go over that blue. Yeah, this might work better, especially up here. And I do not want the shape to feel symmetric, so I want to be careful that I'm getting this sort of drop down and then up. There we go, that's better. I've always liked the phrase, simple, not easy, because a scene like this is simple compositionally. There's no doubt about it. There's not a lot of complexity to this scene, but because there's so little going on, there's not a lot that sort of hides what's happening. You can't really get away with. At least I don't feel like I can get away with, if the shapes aren't pleasing, if it's, if there's not a good imbalance in shapes, if the movement's not working, because there's not details, it's not complex. So, that can be why there's need to really refine some of this. Having said that, I don't want to spend more time than I need to. So if it's starting to work, I can even take, maybe a little bit of alcohol again. Because I felt like that color was a bit too light and I didn't want to just brush it off. So I can, maybe set it with alcohol again, because now it'll mix with the dark color that was sitting under it and it'll darken that entire area. I sort of, in my little study, I kind of indicated where there could be, where there could be some tree trunks. But again, it's so subtle. Not much time spent doing it, and I don't think I want to spend a lot of time on detail. This kind of approach will definitely connect better with some of you than others. Like some of you may not really have any interest in this kind of more abstracted way of painting, whereas others of you, it may be the direction you really want to move with your work. And there's a lot of very successful artists out there who paint with minimal detail, and it's all about kind of the emotional response to the scene and the emotional response the viewer has to the painting. So you may want your work to go in that direction. It's not who I am sort of in total as an artist, but I think there's something really fun about kind of a scene like this that moves more that abstracted approach, that abstracted technique. The texture of the paper is actually kind of nice. It's not terribly distracting, and I think I've covered up enough of the texture of the paper where, it doesn't break apart the overvalue or sort of the overall value structure of it. I could break that up a little bit. That feels too consistent. That sky hole. And something like that, you still see the sky hole. You can still see there's blue popping through, but it does cover up the majority of it. It's just fun, Talked about this before, like sometimes you just need to paint something that's fun, that's not necessarily technically overly challenging or is not sort of, pushing your boundaries. I feel like you can't do that with every painting. It becomes exhausting, like sometimes you really do need to just have fun. Ideally you're finding those paintings or the scenes that allow you to push yourself technically, but they're also kind of slightly in your comfort zone. That's still wet. It's taking a long time to dry. Guys, I actually think it's pretty close. I don't want to do too much. I also don't want, to be honest, I don't want this to jump out too much. I want it to stay abstracted. I want the values to work. I don't want it to go so light that again, the whole thing kind of falls apart. I don't think it does. I think that'll work. That dark feels a bit dark to me. I don't know how it shows up on the camera, to be honest, but I feel like I can. That was also dark. I wanted to go more with one of these green colored, slightly lighter green colors, but maybe I'll take it a little bit warmer. More like that. Gotta be careful though. So that shadow shape, because this is all so simplified, that shadow line becomes very important because it's really kind of the only thing that's differentiating between what's growing above and then what's reflected down. Don't want it to be too hard though. Yeah, I like that softness of it a little bit better. I use this nice violet in the underpainting. I don't know that maybe I did initially put a little bit of it down, but I feel like I want to put a little more in here. Because it is a nice kind of intense violet color. That color is really nice. Has a really nice feel to it when it's sitting next to the gold. You know, and if that edge is feeling too hard, you know, it's a fine line between it being defined, you know, versus overly defined. Like I want you to see that there's a nice shadow there, but that felt too hard. So just going over it with this value that exists in the tree, but also the reflection just helps to obscure that edge a little bit. I think probably leave it at that, guys. I like what's happening. You know, there's some really interesting interactions of color in here. I actually, like I said, I don't mind where some of that texture of the paper's coming through. Overall, I like the abstracted quality of it. Again, there's only a couple big shapes that I feel like work together. again, the difference between this angle and that angle is so key in this painting. That's kind of what it's about. It's that, and then this nice vertical reflection there happening. When I squint, the values do kind of all work together. I almost wonder if that light's too light. See, I have to be careful. I mean, that's such an important area of the painting that if I go in and muck it up, it's not going to work. So I'm probably better off leaving it, even if I may feel it's a little bit on the light side. Probably better again to leave it, because if I go in and I brush it off and I repaint it again, or maybe it's not working, like it's going to lose any sort of freshness it has in that first pass. And I would say that's true in a lot of like your lightest lights in your painting. Like those tend to be a lot of the sort of key finishing marks. And if they feel kind of muddy or they're overdone, or you did it once, it didn't work out, you tried it again, it didn't work out, it can really disturb kind of the quality of the finished piece. So I think I'll leave it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, guys. I'll get this posted today. It's Tuesday. Happy painting all. Take care. Bye.